Space doesn't forgive mistakes. It records them. Every error, every miscalculation, every moment of human arrogance is written into the silence between stars. There are no second chances in the vacuum, only consequences that unfold slowly, patiently, until escape is no longer possible. The ship begins to die without warning. Not in flames. Not in chaos. But in quiet failures that ripple through its systems like a spreading infection. A delay in engine response. A pressure imbalance that shouldn't exist. A heartbeat too slow in the reactor's core. By the time the alarms sound, the truth is already clear: the ship will not save everyone. 6 lives. Power for 5. The computer doesn't argue. Space never does. Someone must leave. Not because they are weakest. Not because they are guilty. But because survival demands subtraction. The escape pod was never designed for this. It is not a lifeboat. It has no destination programmed into its guidance system. No return trajectory. No rescue protocol. It is a coffin that pretends to be mercy. When the pod ejects, it does not drift heroically into the stars. It tumbles, silent, powerless, swallowed by a darkness so complete it erases the idea of direction. The ship vanishes. The mission vanishes. Humanity vanishes. Time becomes meaningless. Structures curve across its surface, not built, but grown. Waiting. The pod was never meant to arrive anywhere. And yet, it has arrived exactly where it was meant to be. Because this planet has been watching the stars for longer than humanity has existed. And it has been waiting. For someone to be left behind. The deep space vessel Astra Virex did not cut through space so much as drift within it, a quiet intruder gliding between star systems that no human eye had ever catalogued. Its hull bore the dull scars of micrometeor strikes, tiny reminders that space was not empty, it was simply indifferent. Inside the ship, time moved strangely. Days blurred into weeks, weeks into years. The mission clock marked the passage faithfully, but the crew felt it less and less. This was a decades-long survey mission, designed not for heroics, but for endurance. 6 crew members. 1 ship. No rescue possible. That fact was woven into every protocol, every training simulation, every quiet thought none of them ever said aloud. The mission itself was simple, at least on paper: chart unclaimed space, scan for habitable worlds, gather data that might one day allow humanity to spread farther into the dark. The Astra Virex was not meant to return quickly. It was meant to last. And for 17 years, it did. Until it didn't. The first sign was subtle, so subtle it almost slipped past the ship's diagnostics. A fractional delay in the reactor's feedback loop. Nothing alarming. Nothing urgent. The kind of anomaly that appeared in long missions and usually corrected itself. Nova Hale noticed it anyway. She had been floating in the engineering bay, tethered loosely to a console, when the numbers hesitated. Just for a moment. Just long enough for her to feel a tightening in her chest that had nothing to do with zero gravity. "Computer," she said quietly, pulling up a deeper scan. "Run reactor harmonics comparison. Last 1,000 cycles." The results scrolled in. Nova stared at them. They weren't wrong. They were off. As if the reactor was no longer quite in phase with itself. She rerouted a minor power flow. The numbers stabilized. The tightness eased. For exactly 12 minutes. Then the warning lights ignited across the ship. Amber at first, polite, almost apologetic. Then red. Gravity flickered, enough to make unsecured tools drift upward before slamming back down. The hum of the engine stuttered, coughed, then resumed at a lower pitch that everyone on board felt in their bones. On the bridge, Captain Elias Rowe didn't shout. He never did. He gripped the edge of the console as data flooded his display, his face hardening with each new line of confirmation. "Status," he said. "Reactor instability," Nova replied over comms, her voice tight but controlled. "Containment bleed. I'm rerouting, but it's not behaving like a mechanical failure." "How long?" Rowe asked. Nova hesitated. "That depends on how honest you want me to be." Rowe exhaled slowly. "Very." A pause. Then, 30 minutes before Cascade. Maybe less. The bridge fell silent. 30 minutes wasn't time to fix a reactor that was deciding, on a fundamental level, to stop obeying human design. Life support alarms joined the chorus, oxygen recycling efficiency dropping, thermal regulation slipping. The ship was beginning to cannibalize itself to stay alive. Rowe looked at the crew. 6 faces. 6 lives that had trained together, eaten together, aged together in the quiet isolation between stars. The computer delivered the verdict without emotion. Life support capacity, 83%. No explanation. No apology. 6 people. Power for 5. Rowe closed his eyes for half a second. Then he made the call. "We don't have enough power for everyone." No one argued at first. The words were too heavy, too final. Then, Nova heard it all through the static, already knowing none of it would matter. The ship had crossed a line it couldn't return from. There were emergency sleeping pods, small, reinforced capsules designed to preserve crew if rescue ever came. A last resort written into the mission charter, discussed only in theoretical briefings no one ever believed they'd face. Launching a pod meant losing one person from the ship forever. Not dead. Just, gone. Time ran out faster than anyone expected. Containment levels spiked. The deck shuddered violently, throwing one of the crew against a bulkhead. Red light strobed like a failing heartbeat. Nova didn't wait for the vote. "I'll take a pod," she said. Rowe turned sharply. "No. We decide this together." "There isn't together anymore," she replied. Her hands were already moving, unlocking the pod bay from engineering. "You know that." Someone shouted her name. Someone else cursed. Nova barely heard them. Her mind was painfully calm, every thought razor clear. She sealed herself into the pod as the ship shook around her, metal groaning under stresses it had never been designed to endure. The hatch closed with a sound that echoed far too loudly in the small chamber. Through the comms, she heard Rowe's voice, strained, almost breaking. "Nova." She smiled, though no one could see it. "Don't waste the distance," she said. Explosive bolts fired. The pod tore free. Darkness swallowed her whole. Behind her, the Astra Virex stabilized, barely. Systems rebalanced. Life support held. The ship survived. And somewhere, drifting alone in the endless night between stars, Nova Hale was gone. Inside the pod, Nova sleeps. Cryosleep is not like rest. It is closer to being erased, reduced to a quiet biological whisper while the universe continues without you. The pod cools her blood, slows her thoughts, stretches the final seconds before unconsciousness into something thin and unreal. Her last waking memory is the vibration of explosive bolts and the sensation of falling, not down, but away from everything she has ever known. Then there is nothing. Years pass. Stars drift by. The pod tumbles slowly through interstellar dark, its hull catching distant starlight in brief, silent flashes. Time outside moves forward with merciless precision, while time inside becomes meaningless. The pod's chronometer continues to count, but the numbers blur together, eventually losing synchronization as radiation and distance eat away at its certainty. Decades slip by like dust. Nova dreams, but the dreams are fragmented, incomplete. Faces without names. Corridors that dissolve before she reaches the end. The Astra Virex calling her back, always just out of reach. Sometimes she dreams she never left the ship at all, that the sacrifice was imagined, that she will wake to familiar metal walls and gravity plating beneath her feet. But the dreams change. At first, it's subtle, a warmth she can't explain, a sense of motion that doesn't match the pod's inertial readings. Then come the sensations that have no place in cryosleep: pressure, direction, intent. The pod was never programmed to land. No guidance system strong enough to cross stellar voids on its own. No destination coordinates. No contingency beyond weight. It should drift forever. And yet, something reaches out. Not suddenly. Not violently. The pull begins gently, like a tide taking hold of a forgotten object. The pod's inertial alarms try to compensate, firing microthrusters that burn precious reserves, but the force ignores them. It is not gravity as humanity understands it. There is no massive body nearby, no star, no visible anchor point. It is selective. Deliberate. Ancient. The pod systems begin to wake Nova early. Temperature rises against protocol. Neural stimulators engage without authorization. Warnings flash across internal displays, unheard by the sleeping occupant. Nova's consciousness stirs. Her dreams fracture violently, collapsing inward. The quiet nothingness of cryosleep shatters into sensation, cold air rushing into lungs that haven't drawn breath in years, muscles screaming as blood flow surges back into them. She gasps. Pain blooms through her body as the pod floods with light and sound. Alarms shriek, too loud, too close. Her hands fumble for restraints that feel suddenly too tight, too real. What? Her voice cracks, raw from disuse. The viewport clears. And Nova forgets to breathe. Outside the pod, filling the darkness, is a planet. It glows faintly, not with reflected starlight, but with its own soft luminescence, as though light is leaking out from beneath its surface. Rings encircle it in slow, graceful arcs, but they are not made of dust or ice. They pulse gently, rhythmically, like the steady beat of a living heart. Artificial. Ancient. Impossible. The pod sensors struggle to interpret what they're seeing. Atmospheric readings fluctuate between breathable and unknown. Magnetic fields ripple in patterns too complex to be natural. The planet does not rotate like a normal world, it subtly reorients itself, aligning with the pod's trajectory as if aware of its approach. No, Nova whispers, her mind scrambling for explanations that don't exist. The pod is descending. There is no violent entry. No firestorm. The air itself seems to part around the capsule, guiding it downward with impossible precision. The rings above shift, their glow intensifying, and for a brief, terrifying moment Nova feels something brush against her thoughts, not an image, not a voice, but the unmistakable sensation of being noticed. The pod touches down. Not with a crash, but with a controlled, almost gentle impact that sends a soft tremor through the valley floor. Silence follows. Nova waits, heart hammering, listening for the hiss of a breached seal, the scream of structural failure. None comes. The pod rests intact, half sunk into smooth, dark ground that looks like stone until it subtly rearranges itself around the hull, supporting its weight. The hatch unlocks on its own. Nova hesitates. Every survival instinct she has screams at her to stay inside, to trust the familiar coffin over the unknown world outside. But the pod's internal power is draining fast, and the air is already thinning. She unseals the hatch. Warm air rushes in, clean, faintly metallic, carrying a low hum that seems to vibrate through her bones rather than her ears. Nova steps out slowly, boots sinking slightly into the surface beneath her. It yields like firm soil, then firms again as if adjusting to her weight. She straightens. The valley stretches out before her, vast and breathtaking. Towering formations rise in the distance, curving upward like frozen waves or colossal ribs emerging from the planet's crust. Light flows along their surfaces in slow currents, tracing patterns that feel deliberate, meaningful. The sky above is not empty. Shapes drift there, massive, distant silhouettes moving in silence, their outlines blurring as if they exist half out of phase with reality. Nova turns in a slow circle, her breath coming shallow. She should be alone. By every law she understands, by every expectation carved into her training and her fear, she should be alone. And yet, the sensation returns. That pressure at the edge of her thoughts. Not invasive. Not hostile. Present. The air shifts. The light bends. Nova feels it then, with sudden, chilling clarity. She is not the first to stand here. She is not unexpected. She is no longer alone. The planet is alive. Not in the way forests breathe or oceans pulse with microorganisms, but in a deeper, more unsettling sense, intentional. Everything Nova sees feels deliberate, as if the world itself has chosen a shape and purpose long before she arrived. The ground beneath her feet subtly adjusts, redistributing weight, stabilizing her balance as though the planet is learning her anatomy in real time. The structures rising from the valley floor are not built. There are no seams, no joints, no signs of construction. They look grown, stone shaped by thought rather than tools. Vast pillars curve inward and upward, arching toward one another like the ribs of an impossible cathedral. Light moves through them in slow, liquid patterns, responding to nothing visible, obeying rules Nova does not understand. The air hums softly. It is not a sound carried by vibration alone. It resonates inside her skull, faint but constant, like a memory she can't place. The frequency shifts subtly as she moves, rising and falling as if acknowledging her presence. Nova becomes acutely aware of her own breathing, the harsh, human rhythm of it standing out against the planet's steady pulse. She takes a step forward. The hum changes. Her skin prickles. That's when she sees them. At first, she mistakes them for distortions in the air, heat shimmer, light bending oddly around unseen forms. Then the distortions resolve, condensing into shapes that step out from behind the stone structures as if they were never truly hidden at all. The Elori. They are tall, their bodies elongated and slender, proportions elegant in a way that feels both beautiful and wrong. Their skin is translucent, not transparent but layered, as though made of overlapping veils of crystal or water. Beneath it, slow-moving light flows, currents of pale blues, silvers, and faint golds drifting through them like living constellations. They have no mouths. No visible eyes. No features Nova can recognize as expressive. And yet, she knows they are looking at her. She freezes. Training tells her to retreat, to raise her hands, to attempt communication protocols. Her body refuses to move. Every instinct she possesses is screaming at once, terror, awe, the overwhelming awareness that she is standing in the presence of something far older and far greater than herself. One of the Elori steps closer. It does not walk so much as glide, its feet never fully leaving the ground, its movements smooth and frictionless. The light within it brightens slightly, pulsing in slow, deliberate waves. Nova's heart hammers. "Hello," she says, her voice thin in the open air. I don't mean any harm." The Elori does not respond. None of them do. They do not speak. They remember. Without warning, the world around Nova collapses inward. Images slam into her mind with staggering force, not as visions she sees, but as memories she feels, fully formed, emotionally complete, undeniable. She is back aboard the Astra Virex. She feels the vibration of the failing reactor through the deck plates, hears the overlapping voices on the bridge, tastes recycled air thick with fear. She feels the weight of the decision pressing down on her chest, the certainty settling in before she ever speaks. "I'll take a pod." The memory shifts. She is inside the capsule, hands trembling as restraints lock into place. She feels the ship shaking violently, metal screaming under stress. She hears Captain Rowe's voice over comms, strained, desperate. Nova. Her own reply echoes through her mind. Don't waste the distance. Then comes the silence. The endless dark. The loneliness so vast it feels like a physical force, pressing in from all sides. Nova gasps, staggering backward as the images release her. She nearly falls, catching herself against a stone surface that feels warm beneath her palm. Get out of my head, she cries, panic tearing through her composure. The Elori remain motionless. Their internal light shifts, flowing faster now, brighter. More images arrive, gentler this time, but no less overwhelming. Humanity's past. Primitive rockets clawing at Earth. Fragile probes drifting beyond the heliosphere. First colonies blinking into existence like sparks in the dark. Wars. Discoveries. Mistakes repeating across centuries with minor variations. Nova understands with sudden clarity. They have been watching. Not passively. Not distantly. They have observed humanity's rise and stumble for longer than recorded human history. They have seen civilizations bloom and wither, technologies surge forward and collapse under their own weight. Earth is not unique to them, only interesting. A sensation forms at the edge of her consciousness, coalescing into meaning without words. You were seen. Another presence joins the first, then another, until Nova feels surrounded not by bodies, but by awareness, vast, layered, impossibly deep. A name surfaces in her mind, placed there with careful intent. The one who was left behind. The title carries weight. Purpose. Nova's knees give out, and she sinks to the ground, breath coming in ragged bursts. I didn't survive, she whispers, though she's no longer sure who she's speaking to. I was abandoned. The response comes not as a correction, but as understanding. You were chosen. More meaning unfolds. To the Elori, survival is irrelevant. Individual lives are threads in a larger pattern, valuable not for their continuation, but for what they signify. Nova's sacrifice, the quiet acceptance of loss so others could live, resonated across the vast observational network of their world. It marked her. To them, she is not a survivor. She is a message. A demonstration of what humanity is capable of when pressed to the edge of extinction. Of what it might become. Or fail to become. The Elori draw closer, forming a loose circle around her. Their combined presence is immense, pressing gently against her mind, testing boundaries, learning. Nova realizes, with a chill that runs deeper than fear, that first contact is not a conversation. And she is the proof they have been waiting for. The Elori do not speak their truth all at once. They unravel it slowly, carefully, as if too much understanding delivered too quickly might fracture a human mind. Nova feels their presence deepen around her, not pressing inward now, but opening, creating space inside her thoughts where meaning can settle without overwhelming her. The planet responds with them. Light flows differently through the towering stone structures, dimming and brightening in long, deliberate cycles. The hum in the air lowers in pitch, becoming almost soothing, like a heartbeat slowing after panic. Nova senses that this moment, is what she was brought here for. Images rise again, but these are not her memories. They are archives. She sees worlds she has never known, planets with oceans of black glass, skies fractured into permanent auroras, cities that float on magnetic seas. She feels entire civilizations compressed into moments, first discoveries, great unity, inevitable division. Technology blooming faster than wisdom. Expansion without restraint. Then collapse. Not always violent. Sometimes quiet. Sometimes merciful. The Elori show her what they are. Caretakers, the meaning conveys, not guardians, not conquerors. Witnesses who intervene only at the threshold between survival and annihilation. When a species reaches too far too fast, when its capacity to destroy itself eclipses its ability to understand the consequences, the pattern repeats. They collapse. The Elori do not stop it. They preserve what remains. Nova feels the weight of it settle into her chest as she understands. The structures around her are not cities in the human sense. They are repositories, vast, living archives where consciousness, culture, memory, and identity are stored long after bodies and planets are gone. These worlds are not tombs. They are libraries. And the silence she felt earlier is not emptiness. It is mourning. She sinks to her knees again, overwhelmed by the enormity of what she is being shown. "You collect the dead," she whispers. The response comes softly, layered with something almost like sorrow. "We remember what would otherwise be erased." The images shift. Earth appears. Not as Nova remembers it, but as the Elori have seen it, tiny, fragile, glowing faintly against the cosmic dark. She watches humanity's timeline unfold at accelerating speed: industrial surges, orbital habitats, deep space probes, weapons that bend physics, artificial minds outpacing the ethics meant to restrain them. She feels the curve approaching. The edge. Earth is nearing its threshold, the meaning conveys. Not now. Not tomorrow. But soon enough that the trajectory cannot be ignored. Nova's breath catches. "You're saying, we fail." "All species believe they are exceptions," the Elori replied gently. The implication hurts more than accusation ever could. Then comes the truth that cuts deepest. Nova's arrival here was not an accident. The moment her pod detached from the Astra Virex, countless unseen systems activated across this world. The Elori had been listening for signals of sacrifice, events that revealed something essential about a species' moral structure. Her pod did not drift randomly. It was guided. Not pulled violently, not seized against its nature, but nudged, its course adjusted across decades by forces too subtle for human instruments to detect. Each correction was calculated, patient, precise. Nova feels a chill as she realizes how long she has been watched. "You chose me," she says, her voice hollow. "Yes." The Elori show her the moment that marked her. Not the pod's launch. The moment before. The fraction of a second when she knew the decision would cost her everything, and chose it anyway, without being ordered, without expectation of recognition or survival. Voluntary sacrifice, the meaning explains. Uncommanded. Uncompelled. To the Elori, this is rare. It is not the act itself that matters, but what it reveals, a capacity for restraint, for empathy that overrides self-preservation. A potential pivot point in a species' trajectory. To them, that makes Nova worthy of contact. The word lands heavily, almost uncomfortably. Worthy not in a moral sense, but in a functional one. She is proof that humanity may still possess the flexibility required to avoid extinction. But worth always carries cost. The Elori show her two paths. In the first, Nova returns. She carries knowledge no human was meant to hold, warnings encoded in physics, solutions to crises humanity hasn't yet fully encountered. With it, Earth accelerates. Energy scarcity ends. Diseases vanish. Interstellar travel leaps forward by centuries. And with each advancement, power consolidates. Conflicts escalate. The same knowledge that saves billions gives a few the means to dominate all others. The future fractures. In the second path, Nova stays. Earth continues blind. Humanity stumbles, corrects, stumbles again. Progress slows through failure rather than foresight. There is suffering, avoidable suffering, but also adaptation. A chance, however slim, that humanity learns restraint on its own. In this future, Earth never knows how close it came to being archived. Nova trembles as the visions fade. "You're asking me to disappear," she says. "To let my species walk toward the edge without knowing." We are asking you to decide which ignorance is more survivable, the Aelori respond. The emotional weight of it crushes her. She thinks of Captain Rowe. Of the Astra Virex limping onward, carrying on without her. Of Earth, distant, abstract, filled with lives that will never know her name or her choice. If I go back, she whispers, I change everything. Yes. And if I stay? Everything remains uncertain. Silence settles between them, not empty, but heavy with meaning. Nova realizes, with a quiet, devastating clarity, that only responsibility without recognition. Love for a species that may never deserve it. Sacrifice extended beyond death into erasure. The Aelori withdraw slightly, giving her space. The choice must be yours. And for the first time since she was left drifting between stars, Nova understands the true cost of being chosen. Not survival. But the burden of deciding who gets to know the truth, and who must be protected from it. The valley grows still. Not silent, expectant. The soft hum that once filled the air recedes to a distant echo, as if the planet itself is holding its breath. The towering structures around Nova dim, their flowing light slowing to a near standstill. Even the sky seems to pause, the drifting shapes above frozen mid-motion. The Aelori wait. They do not rush her. They never have. Time, Nova realizes, means nothing to them in the way it means everything to her. Their patience is not kindness, it is inevitability. The choice will be made, whether she is ready or not. Two paths unfold in her mind once more, but now they are sharper, heavier, stripped of abstraction. Return to humanity. She sees herself emerging from the pod, stepping back into human space changed in ways no one can measure. She carries knowledge that rewrites physics, energy, biology, warnings encoded into equations that only partially make sense. Governments scramble. Scientists argue. Faith shatters. The revelation that humanity is being watched, evaluated, judged fractures the fragile unity of a species still struggling to understand itself. Fear spreads faster than understanding. Some will call the Aelori saviors. Others will call them gods. Others still will call them enemies. Wars will be fought not for survival, but for control of alien truth. Stay. She sees a quieter future. A long one. Nova remains on this world, learning to. She becomes a translator, not of language, but of experience, adding a human thread to an archive of loss. But Earth recedes into memory. Human voices fade. Faces blur. The sound of laughter, the weight of gravity, the simple comfort of knowing someone else shares your limits, all of it slips away until she is the last human witness to a species that never knew how close it came to the edge. Nova presses her palms into the ground, feeling the planet respond, steady, alive, ancient. She closes her eyes. She remembers the crew. Captain Rowe's quiet certainty. The way he always stood just slightly too close to the viewport, as if trying to see beyond it. Tova's laughter echoing down the corridors during off-shift hours. Jaren's constant vigilance, born not of fear but of responsibility. She remembers the Astra Virex, its worn metal walls, the steady hum of systems doing their best to keep fragile life intact. The ship wasn't just transport. It was a shared heartbeat, a promise that even in the void, humans could carry something familiar with them. She remembers the silence after the pod ejected. The way the stars swallowed everything at once. That silence was not empty. It was choice. Nova looks up at the Aelori, their forms glowing softly now, their internal light shifting in patterns she has begun to recognize as attention. She realizes that despite all their knowledge, despite their vast archives of collapsed civilizations, this moment is as uncertain for them as it is for her. You want me to decide, she says quietly. Not because I'm special, but because I'm human. Because you are human, they confirm. And because you chose without command. The weight of that truth settles heavily in her chest. She asks the question that has been forming since the moment she understood what they were asking of her. Will they survive without knowing? The words. For the first time, Nova senses hesitation, not doubt, but consideration. Vast streams of memory ripple through their shared consciousness. Countless examples. Endless variations. Species warned too early, collapsing under the weight of foresight. Species left ignorant, stumbling forward until adaptation or annihilation claimed them. At last, the response comes, not as images, but as something closer to compassion. Some truths protect. A pause. Others only destroy. Nova exhales slowly, the breath shaking as it leaves her. She understands now what the question truly is. Not whether humanity deserves to know, but whether humanity is capable of carrying the knowledge without turning it into a weapon. She looks back toward the distant stars, imagining Earth somewhere among them, small, stubborn, endlessly hopeful. A species still defined by its mistakes, but not yet consumed by them. Her choice will not save everyone. It will not guarantee survival. It will only tilt the balance, slightly, toward one future or another. Nova straightens, her resolve forming not from certainty, but from acceptance. She has already been left behind once. Now, she must decide whether that sacrifice ends with her, or echoes across an entire species. The Aelori wait. And the universe waits with them. The pod ignites, engines humming faintly as Nova drifts back toward familiar space. Stars stretch past her viewport in streaks, familiar constellations she has only studied in textbooks now brushing against her consciousness like old friends. The hum of the pod feels different, alive, patient. She senses the subtle guidance of the Aelori, directing her trajectory with invisible hands. She is returning with knowledge, but it is not all. The Aelori have filtered it, giving her enough to warn humanity, enough to alter critical decisions, but not enough to create weapons that could reshape civilizations overnight. Nova remembers the choice she made, the weight of silence and responsibility. Every fact she carries is a measured gift, balanced to protect rather than destroy. She closes her eyes briefly, recalling the Aelori's light flowing beneath their translucent skin, the soft hum of the planet, and the archives of lost civilizations that waited silently for someone to witness them. Earth comes into view. A fragile, blue marble spinning through the void, oblivious to how close it came to annihilation. Nova breathes deeply as she prepares to transmit her warnings. Governments listen. Scientists argue. Humanity debates the meaning of the data, and for once, the chaos is tempered by understanding rather than panic. The course of history subtly bends. Exploration slows, not from fear, but from caution and insight. Energy programs are adjusted. Policies reconsidered. Humanity does not leap blindly into the dark this time. They survive, fragile but wiser. Somewhere far away, across uncountable light-years, the Aelori watch. Their light pulses softly, reflecting in patterns Nova cannot decipher. Another species has avoided extinction, not through omnipotence, but through a delicate nudge, a gift measured with care. Nova leans back in her pod, exhausted but alive. She knows the burden she carries will follow her always, the memory of the Aelori, their archives, and the knowledge that survival is never guaranteed, only influenced. In the quiet hum of the pod, she smiles faintly. Humanity will continue, flawed but enduring. And somewhere out there, the Watchers continue to wait, patient, eternal, and unseen. The universe keeps turning, and this time, one fragile species spins safely through its path, guided by the choice of one who was left behind.